Brigade. Hello everyone. Sherry Raquel Black in the chef, qui ani the schliff, Sanjikine a versus Chin, Ashihan a Dasuche Ado Todajini Dashanella. I am a member of the Navajo Nation from Toronto, Arizona, and I am the co-working manager for Change Labs. And that was my traditional introduction of myself and my clans and the Navajo language. So thank you for taking the time to be here with us today. First off, I'd like to give a brief introduction to Change Labs for those who aren't already familiar with our organization. We are a Native-led and Native-controlled nonprofit organization based on the Navajo and Hopi nations. Our goal and mission is to provide workspace, tools, resources, and knowledge for Native entrepreneurs. And how we accomplish our goals and mission is through our different programs. We have our co-working program, our business incubator program, our kinship lending, and as well as our doing business program. We are based in Tuba Cities, Arizona. Change Labs programs were developed to strengthen the entrepreneurial ecosystem on the Navajo Nation and Hopi Nation by affecting societal norms on Native populations for how we perceive entrepreneurship. We highlight role models by building a network of peer and mentorship for support, and then developing leadership capacity for all of our participants and growing a community of entrepreneurs itself. And here we have our mighty team that helped make Change Lab the great organization that it is today. We do have some of our team members online right now. We have Cecilia, we have Slavoski, and Christine. Cecilia is the director of our incubator program. Christine Lasser is the director of our kinship lending program, and Slavoski is on the kinship lending team with her. And then I'm sure as we move along, more of our team members will log on. And to talk about the co-working program, we do have construction currently underway on our new headquarters, if you are familiar. And it's going to be located right next to Tuba City Chapter House on Main Street. For those who may not be familiar with what a co-working space is, it's a community space for business owners and entrepreneurs to use to help operate and manage your business. This space in particular will serve our Native entrepreneurs and small business owners, especially those based on the Navajo and Hopi nations in the Four Corners area. So later this year, hopefully by the summer, we will be having a brand new co-working space available for you to use. And some of the services that we'll be able to offer are some tools that you could use for your business. Tools such as desk-based Wi-Fi access, color printing, in-person coaching sessions, and a lot more. We also plan to bring back in-person coaching training for those who are interested. And our list of co-working services is constantly being updated as far as how we plan to support our local entrepreneurs and business owners there at the new headquarters. And we definitely are open to any ideas that you may have on how we can better service our local community. So if you have any ideas on how this co-working space can benefit your business, please let us know. We're really excited to bring this community space for everyone to help build and grow your business. So please stay tuned for more information as construction gets closer and closer to completion, which should be very, very soon. And here we have a recent picture about a month ago where we've had incredible weather in the area, and the co-working space is there in the center. That was a really beautiful picture. Moving along, one of the most popular questions we get here at Change Labs is, how do I start a business? All of our programs and services here are designed to help Native entrepreneurs and artisans, our local vendors, and those we like to call change makers, because that's what our local business owners are. And entrepreneurs, you're change makers. And if you're a Native entrepreneur or a small business owner yourself, please know that you're absolutely crucial to our local economies, and Change Labs is here to help you both start up and strengthen your business. And then now for a brief overview of the Business Incubator Program. It is one of the only Native-led business incubator programs for Native entrepreneurs in this country, and we're right here on the Navajo Nation on the border of the Hopi Nation. This program is led by our Director of Business Incubation, Cecilia So, and starting this year is a 6-month program for Native entrepreneurs who want support and training on how to start and operate your business. So if you're interested and you would like assistance with things like your logo and website design, or how to set up and maintain your bookkeeping and finances, please visit our website here for more information, nativestartup.org/incubator. And then next is another question that we get often: how do I get help running my business? There are so many aspects to being an entrepreneur, and the solutions that you're searching for may not always be obvious. But here at Change Lab, our driving factor is care. kinship, so building relationships among our communities and our nations and our everyone else that we turn to for advice and that we turn to for assistance on running our business. And how Change Labs can help there is through our business coaching appointments. We offer free virtual 90-minute appointments with any of our business coaches. Our coaches are available on Mondays from 5 a.m. They'll be very mad at me, 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. And they each have their own area of expertise depending on the kind of support you're looking for. We have a team of very, very bright and eager coaches, and they each have an incredible, vast library of knowledge in each of their specialties, and they'll be able to assist you in areas that you're needing help with your business. The coaches are able to assist you in areas like marketing to accounting and bookkeeping systems, or if you're just starting out and your business is in the idea phase, they can assist you with creating a business model and navigating the navigation system for things such as your business site lease and registering with the Nation Business Regulatory. This coming Monday, we have Coach Christine Laughter, and she can assist you with things like your business registration, working on your business model, any financial planning that you're wanting to look at. If you're looking at loan applications, she can offer advice there. And you can find more information on or to book your appointment with any of the coaches, and including Christine, at the link here. It's nativestartup.org/events. And then one more question that we get here at Change Labs is, how do I create a website? Until Change Labs can go back to hosting open studio hours at our HQ in Tuba City, I'm going to refer you to our YouTube channel. We currently have over 50 recorded sessions and discussions, each designed for Native business owners and all led by other entrepreneurs and creatives in our network who really just want to see Native people and their businesses thrive. Our workshops have covered topics such as social media marketing, website design, doing business on the Nation, and a lot more. To access any of those past sessions and our listings of resources such as grants and other informational events, I'll refer you to our link here, nativestartup.org/resources. We update this page pretty regularly, so be sure to check in every now and then for any upcoming opportunities. And another great resource we have to offer is our social media platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. I do recommend that you check those pages out for regular postings and updates as well. Change Labs likes to share posts from many of our other partners and others in our networks for great opportunities that they're offering, as well as resources and just events that we think that would be really helpful to yourself and our Native entrepreneurs and business owners. And lastly, there's a whole spectrum of who are considered Native entrepreneurs, and we here at Change Labs have been curating our own list of them. If you're in the market for finding other Native service providers who can help you with your business, we currently have over 600 Native-owned businesses listed here, and we think that each of them are really, really great resources for you to help start and run your business. Or maybe you're just searching for Native-made products. You can visit the site here at resrising.org. And if you're a Native business owner or entrepreneur yourself and you have services and products that you would like to promote, feel free to add yourself to the listing. It's free, and it's a fairly simple process. All right, and if you have any questions about Change Labs or are interested in any of our services and would like to know where to start, feel free to email me. My direct email here is raquel@nativestartup.org, or you can visit Change Labs' website here at nativestartup.org. All right, now before we get started with our guest speaker for today, I want to touch on our workshop etiquette and how we can be respectful of his time today. We do ask that you stay on mute during the presentation unless you're called upon, but please feel free to populate the chat box with your questions or raise your virtual hand, and we'll make sure to get to them before we end the session today. Also, a reminder, the session is being recorded today and will be available on Change Lab YouTube channel later. So introducing our guest for today, we're all very, very excited. Change Lab is a very, very huge fan of our guest today, Mr. Peter Durand. Peter is the founder of Alphachimp LLC, and since 2018 has served as an adjunct professor at Northwestern University Pritzker School of Law, working with students on visual communication and presentation design in the multi-disciplinary Master of Science in Law program. Woohoo! He collaborates frequently with old friends Hopefully we're old friends, and new colleagues on innovation and collaborative design projects worldwide. And this week, today, we have him here speaking for us, which is really, really exciting. I know it's going to be a lot of fun. So thank you for being here, Peter. I know you're a very, very busy person. I'm going to turn the time over to you now, and I'll stop sharing.
Your introduction of me made me nervous. Now, I like to lower people's expectations so incredibly low that I can just slowly step over them. But thank you very much for having me. I am a super fan of Change Labs, and I come to you today primarily as a floundering, wandering entrepreneur who is also an artist and is always trying to figure out the answers to all the questions that came up in the introduction. How do I run a business? How do I start a business? How do I put together a website? How do I market myself? Just to prove that I am a super fan, I've been hanging around Change Labs, I think since it was just sort of a bullet point on a Post-it note on Heather Fleming's probably laptop at the time. We've known each other for quite a while, and I've had the privilege to come out to participate in a couple of different workshops. You may know some of these other superheroes here. This creative talent, both on and around the res. And one of my proudest accomplishments is forcing this guy, Randall L. Barton, to scribe at one of the earliest Change Lab live events. This is before his Super Bowl Hall of Fame moment this last February. And then also Joe Stacy, who I don't know, I'm sure many of you may know him. He's an artist as well, and he's making a living doing same thing I do, which is graphic recording. So that's my primary way that I make my living is as an artist, but as an artist who listens to other people who are trying to figure things out together, and then using visualizing skills, which I just kind of grew up doing to help people see what they're talking about. And the goal of that is to hopefully understand a complex system, or to come up with a plan together and make good decisions together. So I thought what I'll do today is, this is not a super formal presentation like a lecture that I would give at Northwestern University in Chicago. I'm pulling back the curtain and showing you some of the work that I'm doing on myself and my business with some other creative professionals to figure out my answers to those same questions. Where am I going as a small business? What's kind of the next level? What do I need to let go of? How do I tell my story in a way that it connects with the potential partners or customers that I want to have? Does that sound useful to you today? Give me a thumbs up or a hell yeah, or whatever you want to do, because I don't want to waste your time. You're busy people too. So I'm going to start off, and then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to throw, I don't know if you guys have kids who like Legos or making stuff. You know, there's a junk drawer that's got all the stuff that you just cleaned off the floor and put into a box or something, or a drawer. I'm going to dump that all out. So there's going to be a lot of stuff in here. Just use what's useful. And some of the stuff that's in here are visual frameworks that I and others use in the context of helping business owners make good decisions. So I'll go over just a couple of these tools and frameworks. We've used them with the crew there at Change Labs, the business coaches. So I'm going to introduce you to a lot of stuff you may not be familiar with, and you can follow up with me or some of the coaches who also are familiar with these tools if you think they might be useful for you. And then there, of course, there are tons of online resources that can give you more depth and insight. But I'm going to go way back. Many people think I'm younger than I actually am, but I was born a small baby in 1969. And I was born in Nairobi, Kenya, which is in East Africa. And the reason I was born there is I'm a white man today, and I was a white baby, and my parents are both white Americans, and they came from Tennessee, but they were both teachers. And my father was, he studied law and became a lawyer. And after 1 year, he got really bored and he did not want to practice law. And he joined the first wave of the Peace Corps in 1965 and ended up in the country of Malawi. And this was a time where all of Africa was throwing off the yoke of colonialism and new nations were being formed, and every nation was in a mode of trying to put together their legal system, as well as their governmental system, their education system, their healthcare system. So my father was there working as a lawyer, helping to educate and work with judges and lawyers as they were designing the new legal systems for new countries. So he was a teacher. And so I was born in Nairobi, and I went to pretty soon after I was born, we moved back to Tennessee, which is Cherokee Nation territory. And I grew up in the Appalachian area of Tennessee and went to middle school and went to high school. And all during middle school and high school, I was totally into art. So I was a very shy, quiet, introverted kid, and I was obsessed with comic books and drawing and the Incredible Hulk. And I had a really hard time with anything that required a right answer. So math, chemistry, physics, anything where you had to do a formula or spell something correctly, I really, really struggled. And I've never been diagnosed, but I was probably ADHD, whatever the diagnoses are that are thrown around, because I was always squirming and because I wanted to make stuff and play and create things. So I had a pretty tough time in school, except when it came to drawing. And so I was kind of put in that category as, oh, you're the artist. But I always felt weird, and kind of less than. But I ended up going to art school in St. Louis, Missouri, and I loved it. It was perfect. It was perfect for me. I wanted to make things and be around other makers and creators. And so I studied painting and printmaking and sculpture, and I landed on as a major in visual communications, and that kind of covered graphic design, illustration, anything that was telling a story visually and usually for a commercial purpose. And so I majored in illustration, which is telling stories with pictures. And that's what I still love today. I like the process of either reading or listening to somebody else's story and giving it a visual form. I worked pretty hard in school, and I was really, 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 really lucky. When I graduated, I applied for a travel scholarship that was given out to one student, and you had to write an essay about why you should receive this, what you were going to do with that money, where you were going to go, and how it fit into kind of the work you've been doing up till that point and the work you want to do in the future. And what that did is it forced me to ask that question. Yeah, why me? Why should they give me this money? Why should I travel? Which is a good thing for you guys, because you'll be asking that too as you formulate a business, go to banks or other lenders or apply for grants. And you have to explain why you. Why are you worth investing and trusting? And now I'm not saying that to say that you aren't, but it's a really great process to go through, because it forces you to think from somebody else's perspective. Why is working with me or giving me a grant or lending me money or buying my product or service valuable to them? So I convinced them somehow, but I had a real reason for going. This was 1991, before many of you were born probably, but this was when the Soviet Union was falling apart and Russian soldiers were pulling out of all these countries in Eastern Europe, including Poland. And St. Louis had a sister city program with a city in Poland. And I wanted to just go and see what this world was like. And part of that was Poland is a Catholic country, and they have all these churches and shrines and these massive pilgrimages. And there was this pilgrimage to this shrine of the Black Madonna. If you're familiar with Catholicism, like Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico, it has the same kind of reverence in Poland as the Black Madonna of Czestochowa. And I wanted to see this because 1 million young people from around the world were going to take this pilgrimage. It was the first time after the communist government had fallen that people could travel from other parts of the world there. And I wanted to document it in my sketchbooks. So here's some pages from my sketchbooks at the time. Just part of the pilgrimage is walking. So I walked for 7 days with a youth group through the fields of Poland, and along the way just sketched as many of the people and houses and environment as I could, because I was really trying to understand this world that I was not from. I'm not Polish. I don't have any Polish heritage. I didn't speak Polish. And there was a big systemic change taking place in that society, and I just wanted to understand it. So I use journaling today in sketchbooks as a way for thinking, not just to look at something and capture it, which is a beautiful way to be present with a person or an environment. But for me, I also use it just for making notes and getting my thoughts out there. And then through a random set of circumstances, I got another scholarship to study Polish, and a third scholarship to go to the Academy of Fine Arts in Krakow, Poland. Now, each of these scholarships, I had to put myself out there. I had to make an application, have interviews, put together a portfolio. I feel very grateful for receiving those. But once again, I'm going to hit pause. As an entrepreneur, or an artist, or somebody who's trying to make something, there are a lot of times where we can let our emotions or feelings of inadequacy or nervousness kind of let us take that first step of even applying for something or asking somebody for guidance or coaching or help. So all of you that are in the cohort, you've obviously taken more than that first step in working with others. So I commend you for that. But I remember going back in time, I was filled with a lot of insecurity. And this is what that city looks like. It's a medieval European city. And outside the city, there's this kind of hill and fortress. And up until 1991, all of the radio stations and television stations were controlled by the communist government. And then after 1991, it was free market. So these guys that had to escape Poland to France in the 1980s, they came back and they built this radio station, and they said, oh, we need a stupid American voice to be stupid on our rock and roll station. So literally that was how it was. The job was described to me is I walked into the school where I was studying Polish, and the guy at the front desk said, the radio station called, they're looking for a stupid American to have a stupid American show on their stupid rock station. I was like, that sounds great. I had no training. I had never been on the radio, but I said yes. And then the guy that I asked to be my partner, he was very serious, very intellectual, very accomplished. He did speak Polish, even though he was American. He was married to a Polish woman, and he wanted to make it like NPR, fresh air, journalism. They're like, no, we just need it to be stupid Americans on our radio station. This fits into business, I promise. So we had to name this show, and the name we chose was Monkey Business. And this is the origin of my company, Alphachimp. So Monkey Business, when translated into Polish, it kind of means shady character from the outside who's, causing problems. And I was like, well, that kind of describes us, since we're the stupid Americans on this stupid radio station. And we were just, we were making, we were having fun. So it was called Monkey Business. And this was the first time that I had to think about branding. So I had gone to art school and I'd studied design and illustration, but I'd never done any logos or branding for something real. And so we had to do it for this radio station. Now, today, everybody can start a podcast and everybody basically has a radio station. And that language of branding, I think, is just way more familiar to people. But back then, it was not. And at the same time, I had this other scholarship to study 1 year at the Academy of Fine Arts. And I met these two guys. The guy on the left is Andrew Park from England. The guy in the middle is Wojciech Madaj in Poland. And these two young men were same age as me. We were all studying art, but this is where we were really trying to think about, what are we going to do with our lives and with this creative stuff? What's important? Andrew went on to found a company called Cognitive Media, and he is the hairy hand for all the original explainer videos, where the real hand, not the digital hand, the real hand would come in and draw out these amazing TED Talks. This is going back 10 years, but he's the guy that created that whole genre that now is everywhere, just a way of visual communications. So I moved back to the United States, and my big business plan is my cousin's roommate was getting married and moving out. So my cousin needed a roommate, and that was in Chicago. So that's where I moved. That was my big plan. So I filled the hole in a roommate situation, but I landed in Chicago, and I had, no idea what I was going to do based on this crazy set of adventures living in Poland. While I was in Poland, I hitchhiked into Russia, the Crimea, where all of the conflict is happening right now. Hitchhiked through France to England, and Germany. So my resume was a mess, and nobody wanted to hire me. And plus, I didn't know what I was going to do for a living. So I was doing a lot of temping, and I was working for a temp agency about to chew my arm off. I was making a lot of PowerPoint presentations. These are the bad early days of PowerPoint, where it was all black and white, and all you could do was bullet points. And I complained to my temp agent that corporate America really stunk, that it wasn't, a place where I felt like I could live up to my potential, blah, 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 whatever every 20-something-year-old feels when they go to work. And she said, well, I have this weird job that came around across my desk. I don't know what it is, but it mentions drawing, and you seem to like drawing, so go check it out. And it turned out that this was downtown Chicago. It was a innovation center that had been built by a huge company called Ernst & Young. It's an accounting company that handles a lot of technology for big firms, big brands. And they had this innovation center where people were trying to figure out these complex technology projects. Like, let's say, how does AT&T figure out how to make cell phones viable across the United States? That's back in the early or late 90s. So they needed people to help facilitate these conversations and to do these big drawings to document it. And that's how I got started. Somebody just said, oh, you can draw, go start drawing. And I had no idea what anybody was talking about. I'd spent 4 years trying to learn Polish, which is a pretty complex language. And then I was in corporate America. They were speaking English, and I could not understand anything anybody was talking about. It was all phrases like, let's leverage core competencies to maximize shareholder value. What does that mean? They said, oh, let's do what we're good at in order to make money. It's like, well, why don't you just say that? Well, if we say it with simple words, we won't sound fancy. And if we don't sound fancy, they won't pay us as consultants. So why am I showing you this image? This image launched my business. So I went to a large conference in which Ernst & Young and this company was hosting it, and they had all these scientists there, and they were talking about complex adaptive systems, everything from how do ants form ant colonies to how does the internet work, how do biological systems work, virology, computer science, AI, all this stuff. And then at the end, they said, hey, Peter, could you make one poster that sums up these 45 different presentations from all these scientists. We're going to print 10,000 copies and send them out, around the country. And so this was a collage that I did, and I was incorporating a lot of my personal artwork with what I was doing professionally. And then it's too blurry to zoom in, but at the corner, it's like, they're going to print 10,000 of these. I need a website. This was 1998, so that was still pretty fresh. So I went back and I tried to get monkeybusiness.com. It was a porn site. My nickname was Sneaky Pete. I had sneakypete.com. That was a porn site. This is back when that's all that was on the internet. That was it. It was like stocks, sports, and pornography. But alphachimp.com was available. So I had no business plan. I had no money in the bank, but I had a URL, and that became the name of the company, Alphachimp. And it was thanks to Andrew Park. He's the one that helped me brainstorm that. So I'm going to hit pause again. If you're in that space where you're trying to think, what do I name this thing? It may be important, or it just may be something that's entertaining to you, or a good idea that somebody else thought up. But having an identity is it's one of those, once you have a company name, it's like suddenly it feels very, very real. And then getting that URL, that first website, suddenly it feels super real, right? So that's how my company was launched, was through this poster. Around the same time, I met someone special, and we decided to get married. And so that was all happening at the same time of launching this business. So we started working together. And this is one of the early sketchbooks from what is the chimp? What is this business? So this was me trying to figure out, how does the website look? How much, what are the costs involved there? And I don't think the costs have gone down too much, over time for websites. They're still like $70 to, depending on how popular your URL is. But this was me and my partner trying to figure out the business model, the marketing plan, what activities we were actually going to do, and our first terrible chimp logo. So I was just trying to learn Illustrator at the time, very simple shapes, and made this guy, and that was the first logo. And the feedback from our marketing was, is that an owl or some sort of bird? Or I have no idea what that is, but it definitely doesn't look like a chimp. So I was in love with it because I had spent hours working on it. So we had to respond to our market, say, okay, we need something more chimpy. And Paul Frank was a brand that was very popular back there, and he had a great chimp line of products, and we kind of rode off of that and developed our first chimp logo. And so this was the first website design. We had to clean things up, and we had to land on what were the three services that we provided. And that was web design, animation and illustration, and graphic facilitation, the listening and drawing during meetings. A couple of years later, this was the evolution of the website. And one of my bad habits is I was always tinkering with stuff, always messing with the website and my brand. This is one of the early postcards. That was a mailer we sent out. And after a lot of talking with different people and even working with a marketing firm, we got to this very simple description of what we do is, you talk, we draw, the picture tells the story. Because as a grown man, people would say, what do you do for a living? I was like, draw while smart people talk. And they're like, what? How do you make a living doing that? And then that would lead into a conversation of the different groups and companies that use this drawing as a way of solving problems and making plans. But that was like the simplest hook we could come up with. You talk, we draw, the picture tells the story. And it just gave us that first step into another conversation. So it didn't have to describe everything that we did or why it was valuable or use a lot of fancy words. Because I remembered back when I was learning corporate America speak, if it's too fancy, it's got all this ands and buts and with and instead ofs in there, people just can't remember it. At the same time, I was getting pretty bored because I was doing a lot of this corporate work and I wasn't doing any fine art. So I really started to force myself to get back into painting and graffiti writing again. And this is where I met Heather Fleming. So a mutual friend of ours, Andrew, had this conference that he ran every year, and he brought together all these interesting people. And he invited me to come and to do my thing, to do listen and draw. And I showed up, and it was, for me, it was really just very different group of people. And I wanted to come back again. I was like, gosh, if I just do the same boring thing every year, they won't invite me back. So I began to experiment with how can I add more painting and kind of this, graffiti art style into corporate note taking. This is my basement studio where I was really trying to loosen up and just slap around a lot of colors and paint and draw on top of them with marker pens, and broaden things up. Then around the same time, I got invited to give my first corporate presentation at a business conference, and I was so nervous and felt so out of my league that I decided the best thing I should do is rent a caveman costume and show up as a caveman and present using cave paintings. This had mixed reviews on how well received it was, but it was going back to that feeling I had when I was applying for grants and scholarships. Is like, why would anybody trust me to speak at a business conference? And I didn't want people to mistake me for like a consultant or somebody who knew the answer to anything important. But the reason I'm showing you this is this picture went on the web, and then it showed up in every single Google search around graphic recording, graphic facilitation, Alphachimp, or Peter Durand. And I had a guy in France tell me last year that when he was trying to get into this business, like 15 years ago, he was trying to research, and this was the only picture that came up. So it's another cautionary tale. Careful what you put out there, because it may stick around for a while. So I'm going to jump ahead. I met Heather in a program that was part of that conference for social innovation, and she was one of the first cohort of social entrepreneurs who was trying to grow her business. So just like many of you, she was with a group of people that were all doing different things, but they all had very similar questions about, how do I form an organization? How do I explain what I do? How do I find people to work for me? How do I find people to grant me money? So that's how Heather Fleming and I met. And I was really impressed by what she was doing in her story. And to go from, I think that was back in like 2006, 7, to remember that she had these ideas that are now taking physical form there in Tuba City. You know, it's been really incredible to watch Heather hold the red thread, you know, and keep pulling, and lots of other people joining in and making good things happen. So at that same time, 2004, I had my first child with my wife, and I was like, damn, I got to get a real job. I can't be getting on airplanes and traveling around and not knowing where my next paycheck is coming from. And so I was, once again, super lucky. I got hired by Vanderbilt University, which is in Nashville, Tennessee. And they have a medical center there, and they had built one of these innovation centers. And they needed somebody to come work there who could do the drawing thing and also could help facilitate. So I interviewed for this job, and it was as assistant director of the innovation center for a major medical school and medical center. They see close to 2 million patients a year. And I was so unqualified for the actual position. But just like those grants and those scholarships and starting a business, I just put myself out there showed up. I didn't lie or anything, but I think they thought I knew more than I did. Because when I started, once again, I was on that real steep learning curve where I didn't understand the language of healthcare. I didn't understand the language of health IT, because there was all this healthcare language and then all this information technology language, and it was all mashed together. And that's what they were doing, was trying to figure out the technology side of healthcare. So I swam in some deep waters and was just on a really steep learning curve, showing up and once again, just using drawing to help me understand this new world, just like when I was in Poland. I also had the opportunity to travel to China and it was very short. It was for a big conference, but to see just the other side of the world and all the growth and innovation that was taking place there, and then trying to use those drawing skills and sketching skills to understand that complexity and communicate it. In 2012, both Heather and I were invited by the organizers of that conference where we met to travel to Kenya. And that was a big moment for me because that's where I was born. I had not been back since I was a small baby. I took my mother, took my daughter, who was 8 at the time, and was able to return just for 10 days to Kenya and to visit a lot of different groups that were entrepreneurs. They were in technology, or they were health service providers. And the context for that kind of whole trip was, how is climate change affecting women and girls? And what can be done to help them? And so I got to, like I said, I took my mom, and she had not been back in 40 years. And we were driving around, and she said, "That's the school where your father taught." And we just pulled in, and they had a big gate and armed guards with big Kalashnikovs, and there's a lot of security concerns there in Kenya. And they said, you can't come in here without an appointment. My mom just started talking, and they got nervous. I think they said, "Well, go talk to this guy." And when they just kept handing us off, and we ended up being able to tell the director that my father had taught there, and they took us back to the small museum where there were a lot of photographs, and we were just walking, looking at photographs of dignitaries, and there was my dad, and he had passed away 12 years earlier. So it was just really neat to have that circle, close. And I was thinking, gosh, what are all the things that had to come together that I had to go through in order to just see this picture of my father, in the place where he used to teach. So that's a little side note. I'm going to pick things up here. So these are more evolutions of the website and the branding, and always kind of refining what's the core value proposition. How do I explain it? What are the services that we're doing now? Over the years, as technology has changed, our services have changed. We got into doing the explainer animations that Andrew Park kind of started, working more with iPads, with online learning. And in 2018, once again, super serendipitous, lucky situation, I volunteered to teach a free workshop. I was in Chicago at the time, and I taught a free workshop on visual communications. And one of the participants there said, "Hey, I'm part of this program at Northwestern University Law School. It's at the intersection of law, science, and business, and we need help because those 3 areas, people have a hard time communicating visually." So with one email, he introduced me to the director, and a month later, I was a professor, which is not the usual course. So I apologize to all of you who are who have masters and PhDs and have done a lot of research and rigor in publishing to go through academia. And when I received the letter from the university, I called a friend of mine at Vanderbilt said, "Can I call myself professor?" And I showed him the letter. He's like, "Yes, you can." So I am a professor, but in reality, I teach one course there twice a year, but it's for students who are moving from perhaps being in law and they're moving into a scientific field like biotech, or they're a research scientist who has started a business and has to understand about the drug approval process or patent law or organizational structures. So all the students there range in age from about 21, 22 to their 50s and 60s. And they're all different phases of their career. It's a really interesting group. And I just teach kind of the basics of visual communication, visual storytelling, and all in the context of how do you take something that's really complex, but sharpen it so it's appropriate for your audience, or maybe appropriate's not the word, that it connects with your audience. And then helping them understand, what are you trying to do in your presentation? So like for you guys, I see you as my peers, and I'm just trying to share my journey and some of the things that have been helpful in hopes that it gives you encouragement or some insight as you continue on your journey. For others, and for you in particular, you may be putting together presentations that are like a pitch deck, where you have to explain what you're going to do, why you're going to do it, what the market is, what's going to be your execution plan, and what's the potential business growth. So that's a very specific presentation, and you may be presenting that to different audiences. It might be a banker, it might be a potential partner, it might be owner of casino, it might be a chapter house representative, it might be Better Business Bureau. Each of those audiences has a different need for them. So they're the heroes of your presentation. And so that's what I do in the program, is try to cultivate that mindset of not thinking of all the content, but thinking of the audience and what do they need, and how do their need and your need connect. In 2019, I was feeling kind of burnt out again, and I had neglected my artistic side. So I reached out and found a group of artists that were local. This was in the Chicago area, and everybody was basically a working mom or dad. They had kids and aging parents. Some were writers, some were sculptors, some were kind of mixed media artists. And we banded together and said, let's have a show. And so we had this was my first and only art gallery show. And it was all made in one weekend. So we framed it as an event, and we started on Thursday. We showed up, everybody had their thing that they were going to make. We had a common theme. We made everything on Thursday. We had the party on Friday night. And then on Saturday, we had open studio where we were still working on our project and people could show up. And we had all our kids there. And we wanted it to be less of a gallery show where you walk in and nod like this and look at things, and more like a really messy, fun, studio where everybody could ask questions and see the process as it evolved. And out of that, we said, we need a space of our own. So I took another big leap and had to swallow hard, but found an old dairy warehouse building that was open, and I just pounced on it. So I was like a hawk, or more like a buzzard. I was just trying to get in there on this carcass of this warehouse. And so we invested. There were 5 of us that were involved, but I was the primary leaseholder, and I had to figure out the business model for how do I have a space that's a studio and it's an office for my design graphic facilitation work. How's this going to make money and fund itself, and really rethink everything again. And then COVID hit. So we had one of our big openings, February 29th, leap year, right in 2020, right before everything shut down for COVID. And I worked out of that place pretty much alone for a year. It got too much. And even with the PPP grants and loans. Yeah, it was a really tough decision. I had to let that space go as soon as we came out of COVID. And also at this time, I was going through some family stuff, and my kids and their mom and stepdad, because I had gotten divorced during this process, they moved down to Houston, Texas. So I had to reboot and reinvent things and move down to Houston, where I am now. And this is my current website, which the last iteration was, I think, April 2020. So at that point, I was so burnt out with thinking about my own marketing, and I was really in survival mode, like many of us, as an artist and as a parent, trying to figure out how to move across country, close down this other space, get new work, blah, 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 blah. And so why am I telling you that? Because now I'm working with friends in Australia who have a branding company. And all of that story was part of the work that I had to do with them, because I've commissioned them. I'm paying them to help me rebrand. So we're using Miro, and my first assignment was to collect inspirations. So other artists, designers, websites that I really like. And then the second assignment was to put together my whole story of my whole path and the whole path of the company. And now we're in the messy Post-it note phase of, okay, who is your customer? So I've been going through a lot of these exercises that maybe you're going through with your coaches right now, of like, who are you trying to serve? What are their challenges? What are their pain points? And it exhausts me, man. I tell you what. So this is the output from some of that. They use Miro, and they create kind of the big template, and then I go in and I fill it in. And I'm not going to drag you through all this. I just want to let you know I'm going through a similar process, even though I've been in business for well over 20 years. It's just a constant process. So I'm going through that homework right now of what is the personality of my customer. And my goal right now is, I've done so much of work, especially the graphic facilitation work for corporate clients. I also do them for a lot of nonprofits, but it's always got to be kind of a mix for me just to be viable. And I really want to break into climate tech. So I've been working in healthcare a lot, which I will continue, but climate tech, I don't know anything about. So for me, I'm once again on that steep learning curve of just like, what is involved in climate tech? Who are these founders and startups in this world? How can I be of service? Because I believe in what they're doing. And how can I communicate in a way that is useful so that what I have to offer meets what they need, so that we can get working together quickly. And this is just part of that work I'm doing with my friends in Australia, is trying to find the language to make those matches between the pain points of founders of climate tech companies, the remedy that they need that I might have, and then what is the tool or service that can make the connections. And I'm a pretty bad client. So every time we have a call, I'm moaning and groaning about the homework. I didn't do it all the way. I have all the excuses. So if anybody feels the same way, I hear you. But what has come out of this that has been very helpful was first assessing what are the areas that I just have super deep knowledge in, and that quite frankly, I'm at master level. Like I just can show up and start doing it, like a master plumber or HVAC or electrician. What are some areas that I've kind of moved into that I'm still, I'm learning a lot and will always be, but it's very valuable to a client. And that's what this thing is, this personal value profit matrix. So you'll see the first one up there, coaching native entrepreneurs. It's something that for me personally is very rewarding. I believe in, I think is very important. So the personal part is just all about, you or about me, how do we feel about it? How do we value it? The second one is like, well, how much, value does it give you in terms of business compensation? And the third is profit. So it's that calculation of if you invest your time and energy and you receive some sort of compensation, what do you have left over to reinvest? So working with my friend Sarah, this is interesting for me and fun, and it's part of a service that I love doing, but it's not the way I'm going to retire. And I got two smart girls that are all going to college right now. So I got to balance this out. And then the other disciplines down the side, these are the things that I'm doing right now that I can look at this audit and say, okay, there's some of these things that I don't really care about, but like this facilitating healthcare strategy, that's where I make most of my money. So this was just like a numerical calculation that somebody came up with. And it's just a way to look at the things that you do well, that you make money at, that you care about, and then see like, oh, okay, where does that add up? And then in the middle, that facilitating, I'm getting tired and my words are slipping away. Facilitation in just transition, that's that field of climate tech that I want to go into, the just transition work. And I've done a little bit of work with the Change Lab community as well. So that's where the question marks are. That's what I got to go figure out. Like, what's the business model? And how do I meet those potential business clients so I can start doing that work? So this is item number one for you guys. It's just a framework of personal value and profit. The next thing that we're getting into is all the round of work around the client, that gave us a lot of language. Who do you want to work with? What are their pain points? What are the remedies? And now we're getting into playing around with wireframes for a new website that may start as a landing page on my current website. So that means it's, you click a link and it goes to a page on your website, but it's not a separate business. And so I was like, I don't know, what if we called it Climate Scribes? So just like alphachimp.com, did a Google search, see if that URL is available, and yes, it is. So now I have a service called Climate Scribes. And the plan right now is that'll be something that I can begin to talk to climate tech founders or people in the climate tech industry, have a business card, have a separate URL, climatescribes.com, but it takes them to the service at Alphachimp that actually doesn't exist yet. I mean, it kind of does because I already do what I do, but I haven't started doing it for this particular field. So with the brand marketing people, we had to, okay, if it's called Climate Scribes, what is the value proposition or the mission? What does Climate Scribes do? So made it very simple. It's visual facilitation for future generations. So that's a two-part formula of what do you do, and then what does it create? What's the benefit it creates in the world? So I do visual facilitation, which is working with people, trying to figure out stuff and using visual thinking. But the end goal is for the future generations. It's not even for climate tech. Climate tech is all a stepping stone to preserving our planet, to get us off things like coal and oil so that we can. The conference I'm at right now, I'm in Lexington, Kentucky, is on how do we feed 9.5 billion people by the year 2050. So it's all farmers and ag people trying to figure out if we're making a transition in how we get energy and how we get food and how we get clean water, how are we going to feed all the people that are going to show up? So I want to be part of that solution. And then underneath that is the more detailed, well, how do you accomplish visual facilitation for future generations. We help startup teams, institutions, agencies, and nonprofits to have a greater impact through strategic collaboration and visual storytelling. For me, it starts to get kind of janky and long, but we want people to find themselves in there. So whether it's a startup or a nonprofit and they need help because they're kind of swimming around with getting people organized around their strategy, and maybe they've heard of or seen visual facilitation or graphic facilitation. Visual storytelling is a phrase that is very popular right now, so I'm using that as a hook. I teach at Northwestern on that topic. So I'm showing you this because it's the whole backstory that I gave you from 1969, all that work I'm doing with the marketing coaches, trying to get it down to like this, boop, a very simple thing that explains the who, what, when, where, and how, the value proposition, the outcome, and then who is that target market. And now we begin, for me, another phase, which I just had my meeting on Monday and I was like all grumpy and tired. It's like, well, what words do we put in the website? And we're in that messy middle. But this is, if you haven't worked with a wireframe before, this is kind of what it looks like. And a tool like Miro, there are wireframe templates. So they're already built in a tool. You can just plop them right on a Miro work surface. And that's what we're doing. So this is not using any coding or any application other than Miro, but it gives us sort of the basics of, okay, if we had a one-page website or landing page, what are the sections? Where would we need a visual? Where would we need these simple titles and frames? And then how do we take that language that came out of all that customer work and populate it in a way that leads people, that leads prospective clients down a sales funnel? So you may be familiar with that concept and covered that, but if you haven't, you will. So the funnel, which we'll get into in a little bit here, is you have everybody in the world. You have people that became aware of you. You have the right people that you want to talk to. You have them decide that they want to contact you, either through email or having a conversation or clicking on something. And then you have a way to engage them, and then a way to actually provide the product and service and receive compensation or value. It doesn't always have to be money. It could be something else, like you're building a relationship that helps you gain access to a new market or a new community. Or it could be a transportation partner. So maybe you have the product, but they have the transportation. But it's thinking through the who and how do you connect with them and what are you trying to do, and then working upstream, how does your marketing enable that to happen, enable that sales funnel? So this is just giving you a fellow entrepreneur's process that I'm in right now, where I'm trying to reinvent yet again, trying to incorporate the things that have carried all the way back to when I was a little kid, the visualizing ideas, but reinterpret it and maybe let go of some things so that I can move into a whole new sector. And then a final little asset that I've been collecting here is I've been reaching out to friends that I've made along the way at Vanderbilt University and Northwestern, at the conference where Heather and I met, other friends, and just, kind of humbly ask, hey, I'm in the process of reinvention. Wondering if you could just write me, an honest, but positive testimonial that I could use. And that's been, I was a little nervous to do that. I felt kind of like schmucky asking, but everybody said yes, and the things I got back just, they made me tear up, because these are people I respect and care about. And I want to take care of the trust that they've given me and the friendship that they've given me over time. So I'm going to hit pause for any questions right now. And if there aren't, I have work that you guys can start doing. So thanks for listening.
Woohoo. Thank you, Peter. All right, everyone, the floor is open for questions. Or if anyone from Change Labs has any comments. I know we all really love hearing a presentation by Peter.
Well, you can also call me out on anything I said that was highfalutin or incorrect.
Hey, Peter, this is Tim. Good to see you again. It's been a while. Colorado. Hey, I got a question. Everything you showed there, that was all done on Mural. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right, because we're using Mural right now with our members as well. So I know how to expand it out. You just took it all the way out and blew it out at all different areas. Going.
Yeah, and you can get lost, at the wild. But that's a primary tool I've used for almost all my engagements, starting during the pandemic.
I'll say something, Peter. That was so great. I really liked seeing the metamorphosis of your logo and like your first concept that you did in Illustrator. I remember Illustrator back in the day too, but anyway.
The crazy monkey owl version.
Yeah. And then like how it kind of evolved over time. Like it would be really cool to see like some kind of animation, like your very first one to kind of what it morphed into to today. But just that you're constantly reinventing and looking at it and pulling it apart. And, I think that as new entrepreneurs is really important to say that like, just because I started with this doesn't mean it's forever. Like, the new technology and the new things that are out there and things that you can play with. And then I also really liked the picture in your caveman suit and how that caveman kind of, stalked you through your career and followed you, that you have to kind of be careful of what you put out there. And in today's imaging and branding, that once you post it, it's always going to be there. So be careful of what you post, but also like what that probably inspired, for your client.
It's pretty tame, it wasn't my mugshot. Yeah, that's a reality out there for too many. Yeah.
So I just loved it. Thank you for that. I think as we're as cohorts and entrepreneurs here that we're using Mural. We're going to start our pitch decks, and we have 2 cohorts going right now. And this kind of information of kind of just mapping it out is a great way to start kind of, putting together how to present and roll out your company to others. So I loved it. Thank you.
Thank you. And I hope, I've tried to make it abundantly clear. It's fighting through the natural, for me, I have a natural inhibition. Well, actually I have 2 modes. It's either I will think about things forever or tweak things forever, or I'll just do it, and not think too much. And so both of those at the extreme get you somewhere or in trouble or both. But as an entrepreneur, it's just progress. It's just always keep going forward. I have an online course that I've been redoing for 10 years, and I still haven't finished. First time I launched 2011, so it's over 10 years. And it's because of perfection. I was like, there's so many courses now, and I keep so that's the negative side of constantly refining and getting things ready. And so speed and commitment are very good things.
Mr. Durand, I just wanted to thank you also for the presentation. And I said Mr. because I'm going to call you out. You do look old. And I feel old too. And part of the what I wanted to emphasize also was your trip overseas and being able to go to school overseas and learn another language and see things from the European perspective. I think that has helped in my evolution as well. I spent 10 years in Germany, in Stuttgart and Schwäbisch Hall, and learned the language and went to school out there and everything too. So I think that's really important part of your evolution and your story, and also being in other places like that. So I want to thank you for that. More of a comment than a question of anything. I think the evolution and the thinking about the climate and thinking about technology and how it can be done better, and also more of a just way. So the just transition, I think, is very important in the next decade or so for all of us to put our hands into it. So thank you for doing that, and I appreciate your presentation. It's really great.
Thank you, Mr. Van Dever.
Yeah.
Thank you. I want to say thank you, and also thanks for utilizing Mural to give us like a visual. Sometimes I wish I had a way to create or label all the things that go inside my brain. So now I can see the potential of Mural. And wow, that was awesome. It's like I jumped inside your brain, and I could like visually see your timeline and see your logo come to life. And I really dig that. So, and thank you. I've always like, I never think about it until after the fact, but collecting testimonials in advance, even though it feels kind of awkward, I think that's a great idea. And I'm definitely going to add that to my repertoire.
All right. And then Peter, just to let you know that Ira and Sahar are part of one of our cohorts as well.
Great.
They're both in our cohort.
Congratulations.
For the incubator.
Good crew.
Yeah, and I want to say thank you too. I really appreciated the personal value profit matrix. I know Change Labs coaches, including myself, have their own coach. So they're coaching us to be coaches. And one of the things that I learned recently through my coach is that I'm a non-linear thinker. So you presenting through Miro is exactly how I feel like my brain processes information. I'm not a linear thinker, thinking on one timeline or one platform, that my brain is all over the place. So I comprehended your presentation really, really well. I think that's because of how I found out that I'm a nonlinear thinker. And one of the things that working with my coach, one of the things that I'm working on is how to better my networking skills, how to cultivate relationships on a professional level or even a personal level, because in Native tradition, or most Native traditions, I should say, in cultures that we're very based, so meaning that we're kinship based. So our relationships play a huge factor on our whole livelihood, not just at home, but also with our businesses and how we interact with other people in our community. And I think that the matrix will help me work on my networking skills because I can visually put it down. So that's a really great tool that I think that I really took away from this presentation. So thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah, just a note on that. So this week I received an email from the client that kept me alive all during COVID. Because they did all virtual events, and they are going through a period right now where their mothership is like carving up all their teams and basically destroying everything. And they sent the mothers, the owners, the leaders up here sent out an email, said no more contractors. So my friends at this company, were really devastated. There were a handful of us, and they just said, "Oh, so sad, but we can't work with you guys." And I just wrote back and said, "Look, life is long. It's not a straight line. It's a squiggle. And I've never let go of anybody I've ever worked with who I like. Like they just have become part of my friend. That's what networking is, right? It's just like you get bored and you're like, I wonder what Cecilia's doing, and just reaching out and checking in, offering a hand. But I was coaching them. Yeah, they're telling me they're letting me go along with my 5 other contractors. And I was like, look, you might be the next one let go. So let's all stay together and let me know how I can help you. personally or professionally.
Yes, that's really great. That's another point that I took away from your the timeline of your how you started up in the beginning and how you met Heather. Like it's really cool to hear that side of the story of Change Lab, and knowing that our grand opening is coming up and we're going to have a presentation on how Change Labs came to be and how this building came to be, because it's not an easy thing to do, especially on native land and on the reservation. And hearing your part of the story and how you plug in into how Change Labs came to be is really exciting for me.
I'm just a mosquito, man. I'll just buzz by, take a little sample. But that's the fun part of the work I do is I get to listen to people as they're figuring stuff out. And then over time, seeing what actually gets made. And you guys are making it. I have one other thing to share, and it's coach related. But I want to make sure if anybody has a question or anything they want to reflect back, jump in.
I just shared one thing on here, and it's you were talking about your next project. It's called the Hunger Project. So I put a link in there.
Oh, thank you.
If you ever want to talk about it, let me know. It's a global thing. So Suzanne Fritz, a friend of mine, created that company.
Thank you. That's in Houston. After this big cross country move, I wanted to find local work because I didn't have any. So I used my network. My friend Jody in Nashville said, "Oh, you should talk to Heidi in Houston. We did this project 10 years ago." So Heidi in Houston started this new center for community health workers, and that's now become my local gig. So we're working with community health workers on hunger, diabetes, heart disease, COVID response. But that's just to illustrate, how networking happens. You do good work for good people. You broadcast, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. And just like Cecilia did, they'll shine something back. Oh, check this out, or call Heidi. All right, I want to shine some light on the coaches. Is that okay? You guys don't hang up. Don't jump off yet. All the coaches disappear. Okay, so this is another framework, and this is some work that we did this June together, or last June, around journey mapping. And so a journey map, I dragged you through my whole journey, but if I were to put that on one piece of paper, that's how you use a journey map. And it's a tool that you can use for your business journey or for your customer journey, or if you're working with patients or let's say school kids, or, is chart out, well, what's the journey and what are all the challenges, the pain points, what do they run into that helps them along the way? And on Miro, there are a lot of these tools and frameworks that you can just copy paste right onto Miro and start messing around. A lot of them are very schematic. They aren't very artistic, but I just bought a bunch of these cards that are all around different facilitation techniques. They had a journey map card, and it was just two sides of this card, very simple instructions. So there are a lot of resources out there, and you're already using a tool, Miro, that has them built in there. And the thing about a map, is they're helpful, and they represent the territory, but they're not always accurate. So that's, and this is where pitch decks, which are kind of a journey map, can be elusive. Like a pitch deck can look awesome, but doesn't map to reality, right? And the way we perceive things is not the way reality is. So working with a potential customer or somebody that can be the voice of a customer is really important, so that you don't that they can test your assumptions. Here's an example of a very schematic journey map. This is how an AI system is built. They took it all the way back to the Big Bang and the creation of the universe and where minerals come from. And then this, and then how do you make a wire? And that whole thing's in there. Like, how do you make all the components of a computer, of a cell phone, an operating system, all the way up to an AI? But here's where the coaches are going to shine. So in June, came up to Colorado. We had a little retreat. And each of the coaches created a journey map to explain how they got here, here at Change Labs, here where we were meeting in Colorado. Many of the coaches maybe they had met each other once or twice, but they hadn't worked together and really didn't know each other. So this is a way, if you're working with a group, whether it's internal team members or your competitors, is have people just sketch out, what's your journey? And that helps build community and understanding and awareness before you get into the hard work of building a product, service, or strategic plan. So it's a way for humans to be humans, to tell their story, and then for us to see commonalities, and then also understand, well, oh, that's why I'm going to pick on Tim. That's why Tim is so obsessed with financial viability. He has this deep career in the finance and banking industry. It's not just some jogger who ran up one day and said, hey, I know what you should do for your finances. He has this whole deep, experience. So we used journey mapping, and then the kind of real reason that I was brought out there was to discuss the business model canvas. And this is a whole other framework that the coaches have been using. And the reason I'm showing this is this fits into my life passion, which is visualizing complex systems. And so I'm just going to walk you through real quick in the 2 minutes we have, unless you have to kick me off. The framework looks really boring, but here's what the framework is about. It's about real customers, value propositions, which is your product or service. It's the thing that somebody needs or wants. Channels are basically, how do they get it? Do they get it on a truck? Do they get it via email? Do they get it at a store? They get it over the phone? And then how do you build a relationship with that customer? Modern times, there's a lot of email and mobile marketing campaigns, Instagram, TikTok, or just showing up at the flea market every, Saturday. But how do you maintain those relationships? And then where does money come from? Where the money at? So how does revenue come in? And then what do you need to make that product or service? That's what a key resource is. It's usually people, tools, and locations. Sometimes it's subscriptions to apps and other things. And then what's the work? That's what key activities are. What do you have to do to make the product or service? And then who are your key partners? Could be your banker, your accountant, your lawyer, your cousin. Who is important that makes stuff happen, makes it possible for the product or service, that value proposition, to happen. And then finally, how much does all this cost? Because the simplest business plan is always make more money than you spend. That should be always the plan. Make more money coming in than goes out. So how much does it cost? And so that is real world stuff, real people, real equipment. And that's why the framework looks the way it does. It's an overlay on reality that turns into these boxes. So when you're using this with your coaches, it can feel super abstract, but to the best of your ability, just remind yourself, these are real people, real objects, real offices, real computers, real costs. But this gives one image of a whole business. It's a very useful tool. And the most valuable part of a business model canvas is having the discussions about the business. It's not the canvas itself. It's having those discussions. So I'm going to salute you all. That's my hour and a half, and I hope it was worth your time. And I look forward to seeing the new workspace in person this summer.
Woohoo! Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Oh my gosh, that's a lot of information, but really, really great information. So is there any last second questions at all? Thank you, Peter. There's Peter's email in the chat box if you guys want to follow up on any of the information that he provided for us. And then if you missed any part of Peter's presentation, this recording will be available on Change Lab's YouTube channel very, very soon. And then if you missed any part of my presentation at the beginning, it'll be on that same recording as well. We do have another workshop coming up in a couple of weeks that'll be posted and announced very, very soon as well. And I will thank you all again for being here. It doesn't look like we have any last minute or last second questions or comments. Just a lot of gratitude. So yeah, I will bid you all goodbye for now. And I hope you guys have a safe and warm rest of the week. It's finally spring. Oh my gosh, I can walk outside without a jacket. So I will see you all later. Oh, one more note. We do have our grand opening. I did mention that Peter brought up some really great information about the beginning of Change Labs, and we have our grand opening coming up in June. We actually officially set the date, June 16, in Tuba City at our headquarters.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to RSVP, I just put the link in the chat box there. Otherwise, you can check out our social media for other updates on there. And if you want any other, or if you have any other questions, you can feel free to email myself as well. So have a great day, everyone. We'll talk to you all later.
I just RSVP'd. I'll see you there.
Woohoo!
All right.
Thanks.